Jahannam. Now, before I open the floor for Q&A, there's actually 20 minutes of lecture left, inshallah. I decided I'll do something unique. I've never done this before, but just, inshallah, something different. I went over in 10 lessons a fairly detailed, I would say this is advanced to intermediate advanced. This is not a basic level. We went over in a lot of detail, and more advanced than this is really going to a level that only experts do. We have done a very, very thorough job of explaining what we know about barzakh from within the framework of the Quran and the Sunnah. And inshallah, in our next series, beginning in January, we'll then begin from post-barzakh with the trumpet and there. Now, what's left? I decided to do something I've never done it before. Quickly, very briefly, go over what do other groups within Islam, but not within Sunni Islam, say about the barzakh and the hereafter. Okay? What do the other firaq believe? Now, of course, we mentioned Sunni Islam, and as we're all aware, or some of us are aware, I should say, not all of us, some of us are aware that historically speaking, Sunnism has been categorized into three very, very close strands, the Athari, the Ash'ari, the Maturidi. And the fact of the matter is that these three strands, unfortunately, some people make the differences between them larger than they need to be, and they are really so similar to one another that this entire series indicates that. The Athari, Ash'ari, and Maturidi theologians have zero disagreements when it comes to the issues of barzakh and akhirah and qubur and arwah. And throughout these 10 lessons, I was quoting all of these scholars interchangeably. Unfortunately, sometimes some people want to make these issues bigger than they are, and in reality there is no need to do that. I can quote you Ghazali, I can quote you Ibn Teymiyye, I can quote you Bayhaqi, I can quote you Al-Iji, I can quote you Al-Juwayni, and all of these scholars are saying the same thing, because in reality the differences between these strands are very, very minute, and they don't need to be made bigger than they are. So alhamdulillah, all of mainstream Sunnism, all of classical Sunnism, because the advanced students do know, even within Sunnism, we have multiple mini strands, or I should say currents is better, not strands. But when it comes to these issues, by and large, the classical currents are all the same, zero ikhtilaf. How about non-Sunni movements? Let's begin with the Mu'tazila. The Mu'tazila have typically been the other from which Sunnism always derives its own. They refute Mu'tazila to then derive their own theology. And the claim was that the Mu'tazila deny Adhab al-Qabr and they deny Na'im al-Qabr. This was the claim. The Mu'tazila deny these things. But in reality, when you go to their teachings and their writings, they do not deny Adhab al-Qabr and Na'im al-Qabr. And this is one of those things that once again, when you look at the polemics of the groups, a lot of times one group will smear the other, and that smear or that stereotype will then last, and nobody's going to then do the research and say, what do they actually say? And so what happened was that one or two of the early Mu'tazila, they did deny Adhab al-Qabr, but mainstream Mu'tazila, they affirmed Adhab al-Qabr. And the most famous theologian of the Mu'tazila, his name is Al-Qadhi Abdul Jabbar, and he has written Al-Mughni and many writings. And Al-Qadhi Abdul Jabbar affirms the barzakh, he affirms Munkar and Nakir, he affirms Adhab al-Qabr and Na'im al-Qabr. So the Mu'tazila agree with all of these things just like the Sunnis do. The third group we're going to quickly do is the Ibadiyya. And the Ibadiyya are the only group that are still remnants of the ancient Kharijites, but they're not quite Kharijites anymore. Over the course of the last centuries, they have evolved, and the Ibadiyya are the official theology of the country of Oman. And they have slight differences in theology, but when it comes to, again, Adhab al-Qabr and Jannah and Jahannam, they are exactly on the same wavelength as us, no differences whatsoever. So these are the non-Sunni and non-Shi'i groups, the Mu'tazila and the Ibadiyya. Now we get to the Shi'i groups. Shi'ism is a trend that has many different strands within it, many different strands. And once upon a time, there were many dozens of Shi'i strands. In our times, there's only a few. Of course, the largest one, when we say Shi'i, most people only think of one primary group. These are the Shia of Iran and of Bahrain and others. These are called 12er Shia. These are called Ithna Ashariya, 12er Shia, because they believe in 12 Imams. And no doubt they have differences with us in many, many issues. However, once again, when it comes to Qiyamah and Barzakh and Na'im al-Qabr and Adhab al-Qabr, generally speaking, they're on a very close wavelength with some very small issues, as we will see. One of their theologians, At-Tusi, who died 460, he writes, whatever the Prophet or the Imam tells us about the Akhirah, we must believe in it. Because, according to them, a hadith is not just what the Prophet ﷺ says. If an Imam, they have a number of Imams, if an Imam says something, it takes the status of a hadith. It's the same to them, because the Imam speaks as if it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if an Imam says it, it becomes theology. So Al-Tusi writes, whatever the Prophet ﷺ or the Imam tells us about the Akhirah, we believe in it. Such as the Hayat al-Barzakh and the Na'im al-Qabr and the Adhab al-Qabr and the questioning of the two Malakain and the Hawd of Ali radiyallahu anhu. The Hawd of Ali. We believe the Hawd belongs to the Prophet ﷺ. So we see some differences here, that Ali, or they say Amir al-Mu'mineen, they called him, that he will have the Hawd, that he will give water to those who are thirsty, and he goes on and on. Another of the great theologians, Shaykh al-Mufid, who died 413, he writes that regarding the coming down of the two angels and their su'al of the people of the qabr, this is something we affirm. And there is ijma' of the Shia and the Ashabul Hadith, he means Sunnis. There is ijma' of the Shia and the Sunnis that this will happen. And we believe, now this is interesting, and I don't know their evidence for this, but this is what they said. He said, we believe that the two angels that come to the righteous, their names are Mubashir and Bashir. And the two angels that come to the unrighteous, their names are what? Wrong. Nakir and Nakir. What is the evidence? I don't know. But they say that the two angels that come to the righteous are different. Mubashir and Bashir. And the two angels that come to the kafir and the unrighteous are Nakir and Nakir. And by and large, when it comes to Qiyamah and Jannah and Jahannam, they are on the same wavelength as us, that they affirm in heaven and hell. Now obviously, who gets to heaven and hell in their theology is a huge controversy, and maybe we'll get there when we get there. But the point is, their conception of its existence is similar to ours. Now, all of these groups, they affirm an akhirah and a barzakh and adhab and na'im al-qabr, and that is why, generally speaking, we consider them to be from within the fold of Islam. And I have said this very explicitly, even the first month I came with an extended Q&A, that these groups that I just mentioned, generally speaking, the ummah considers them within Islam, even if we disagree, sometimes very vehemently disagree with some of their theologies, but we don't expel them from Islam. And this is an indication, because here's the point, dear brothers and sisters, somebody to believe in two angels coming down, and to believe that there is hayat in the barzakh, it shows that they believe in what Allah and His Messenger have said. There is no other source of this knowledge. So deep down inside, there's something that they're believing there's an akhirah, and there's qiyamah, and there's heaven and hell, and there's going to be two angels, and there's su'al of the two angels. There is some level of iman that they're having in order for them to do that. And that is why, generally speaking, mainstream Islam has not considered these to be, they are within mainstream. When I say mainstream Islam, I mean they're within the ummah of Islam. We disagree with their theology and their issues of the Sahaba and whatnot, but they are not outside the fold of Islam generically. Now, let us go a little bit further than them. And now we begin to see stranger beliefs. Beliefs that, frankly, I don't even have time to explain to you, because they are totally different paradigm, totally different. And we begin with the next firqa of Shia Islam. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, the 12ers, they say this, the Zaydis of Yemen, they're also called the Fivers. They also believe like the Mu'tazila and the Ibadi, so they're exactly the same. They believe in Munkar and Nakir, they believe in Su'al al-Malakain, they believe in Hayat Barzakhiyya. So the Zaydis of Yemen, Yemen has around 40% of Yemen is Zaydi, and you know there's some issues and tensions that are political in nature. Theologically, the Zaydis are the closest of the Shia groups to Sunni Islam. And at one level, you can't feel sorry for them, because the Sunnis consider them Shia and the 12ers consider them to be Sunni. So la ilaha ula wa la ilaha ula, they're smack dab in the middle. Because they say, generally speaking, Abu Bakr and Umar are not the best, but they're good people. They're not bad people. So they are okay, but Ali was better than them. To say this in Sunni Islam means you have begun Shia, Tashayyu'. So we look at them as the first stepping stone to Tashayyu'. And for the 12ers, to say that Abu Bakr and Umar had a legitimate khilafah means you're a Sunni. You get the point here, right? So the 12ers consider the Zaydis to be Sunni, and the Sunnis consider the Zaydis to be Shia. And so they are kind of sort of La ilaha ula'i wa la ilaha ula, and that has given them a fierce independence, intellectual independence. They're known, and that's why San'ani and Shawkani and others, they come from that strand of Islam. When it comes to these issues, they are 100% on the same wavelength as us. Heaven and hell, munkar and nakir, adhab al-qabr, na'im al-qabr, all of it is exactly the same. And they're also called 5er Shia. So we did 5er Shia, we did 12er Shia. Which one is left now? 7er Shia. Okay, 7er Shia, also called Ismailiyya. Now, Ismailiyya are very, very complicated to discuss. And that is for many reasons. Of them is because they themselves are divided into a number of groups. It's not just one group. And for the purpose of our quick class here, because I know there's to be extended Q&A, we will briefly say that Ismailis, for the purposes of our class, so they're more advanced than this, and if you take the class I'm giving next semester, by the way, free plug here, allow me to do that. I'm teaching a class at the Islamic Seminary of America. If you want to take that, we'll go into a lot of detail about various theologies and whatnot. For the purposes of this lecture, I'll say Ismailis are primarily three groups. The first of them are the Dawoodi Bohra. The second of them are the Nizari Aga Khanis. And the third of them are the Duruz. Okay? These are all three existent groups. There were more that are no longer existent. But in our times, these three groups are existent. They're alive, they're well, they're healthy, physically speaking, and they are in the millions, all of them. The Aga Khanis are around 15 million. So they are a good quantity. It's not trivial. The Dawoodi Bohras are at least 2 million, and the Duruz are at least 1 million. So these are large groups. All three of them emanate from the Ismaili strand of Shi'ism. Okay, all three of them are under the rubric of Ismaili Shi'ism. Now, Ismaili theology is something that is very atypical to Sunni understanding. And I don't have the time, nor is this the place to go into those issues. I'm going to be very, very simplistic, so the advanced students that are online or in the audience, please forgive me, but sometimes when you teach something, you have to teach it in a simple manner. Generally speaking, Ismaili theology takes its origins from what we call Neoplatonic thought. Plato, and then the original Christian authors who took the ideas of Plato and then regurgitated them and did their own interpretations. And to be very simplistic, Ismailism believes that there's something called the active intellect, al-aql al-fa'al. And this active intellect, it emanates out like waves of the sun, its power, and that emanation allows the creation of the world, and that creation goes through multiple circles or multiple phases. They believe in 9 different circles of existence, and we are at the very bottom, the very end of it. So, in a nutshell, their cosmology is radically different than our own, and their understanding of God is radically different than our own. And this is going to be shown now when it comes to their beliefs in the Akhirah and the Barzakh and Jannah and Jahannam. And that's why I'm saying I want you to understand that the groups that believe in an Akhirah, generally speaking, they're within Islam. We can understand them, right? They believe in judgment and whatnot. Then you get to other groups, they're just very atypical from what we are accustomed to. And so let us begin with the ones that is the closest to Sunnism, and that is the Dawoodi Bohras. Because what happened was there was a schism between 2 brothers of the Fatimid dynasty. Nizar was on one side and Dawood was on the other side, and that schism made 2 big branches of Ismailis split up amongst them. So on the one hand you had the Bohra, and on the other hand you had the Aga Khanis. And the Bohra represent original Ismailism, which goes back to around 300, 400 Hijrah. Original Ismaili doctrine. And the original Ismaili doctrine, even though it's a bit strange from our ears, nonetheless, there is within it Sharia and Salah and Zakah and Hajj and Sawm and overall a belief in the akhirah. It's not emphasized. Their books of theology are more interested in the level of the imams, but deep down inside they do affirm heaven and hell. And they do aim to get into Jannah. This is Buhri, Dawoodi, Shi'ism. And that is why it is my own ijtihad, and Allah knows best. The Buhra are within the fold of Islam because they believe in the kalima, and they pray, and they fast, and they do sajda, and they read Quran, and they go for Hajj and Umrah, and there is religiosity amongst them, even though their beliefs are very strange. But still, meaning from Sunni Islam, and you compare them. But still, there is level of religiosity amongst them. And those people from India who interact with the Buhra, you know this from your own interactions with them. However, what happened was that the Nizari branch, the Aga Khani branch, it took a sharp right or left turn. And one of their imams, who is called Al-Hasan ala dhikrihis salam, he essentially completely changed Ismaili theology, or I should say Aga Khani theology, and he claimed that Qiyamah had taken place in his own time frame. And he said, we are now living on Jannah on earth. And he said, there is no Sharia anymore like there was no Sharia for Adam in Jannah. And because of this, the Nizari branch or the Aga Khani branch took a very different route. And they considered the Sharia that we follow to be outdated and irrelevant. So there is no salah in that branch of Ismailism. There is no zakah the way that we do it. They pay some money to their imam. There is no fasting the way that we do it. There is no hajj. Nothing of this nature. They do not pray. They do not lower their head 5 times a day, even though once every while they might do a sajda, one sajda. There is no rak'ah, there is no fatiha, it's not like that. And their Jamaat Khanas, they have rituals that they do in which they recite hymns in ancient Gujarati called jinans. They recite these jinans. And in these jinans, there is a notion of transmigration of souls. Do you know what that means? The soul goes from after death, the soul goes from one person to another person. There is no concept of heaven and hell anymore. The souls are transmigrating. And this is something that emanates from Gnostic religions. And we still have it in Buddhism and in Hinduism. Okay, that issue of reincarnation is called transmigration of the souls. It is not something that is coming directly from the Quran. However, this is found in the Jinans. However, Aga Khan III, who is the grandfather of the current Karim Aga Khan III, he's the famous Aga Khan that was active when Pakistan was founded, the one that was weighed in platinum and silver and gold, that guy. His son was passed over. His son was married to Rita Hayworth. Aga Khan III's son lived a lifestyle that we would consider to be profligate and a playboy lifestyle. It's well known. And the son was passed over. So Aga Khan III, for the first time in Imami history, he passed over his living son. And he made his grandson, who at the time was a junior at Harvard in 1950 or something. Okay, he was a 1-year-old kid at Harvard. He made his grandson the imam. And that current grandson is now Prince Karim Sadruddin, the 49th imam or whatever. So that is the current imam. So the father was passed over because of the lifestyle, and it's well known. You read his stories and it would not have been a disaster. So he gave it to the grandson. Aga Khan III was the one who codified modern Nizari Aga Khani thought. He was the one. So Aga Khanis used to wear the hijab. There was some semblance of religiosity. Aga Khan III was the one who said, no more hijab. Get rid of this. We're going to dress like and live like Europeans and whatnot. And Salah and Zakah was codified. Nothing like this. We don't do anything of this nature. So there is no Salah and Zakah. And amongst his changes or whatever, he was literally asked about reincarnation and heaven and hell. And he gave a very philosophical answer in which he essentially said that the soul moves from one sphere to another sphere until it will go and reunite with the highest intellect. Okay, so this is a very Platonic theology which we don't quite understand in our Sunni paradigm. It has to do with Plato and his notion of the active intellect and whatnot. And so he's basically in a very gentle way saying that the souls are supposed to rise up every time they come back, which is essentially reincarnation, until finally it reunites with the active intellect. But he didn't say it explicitly. It's very couched language. So he didn't want to cause too much of a tension. So this is the Aga Khanis. Now we move to the third branch, and that is who? The Duruz.